Hi, I'm Tenessa with Tenessa Talks. On this episode, we are going to dive in a little deeper into looking at your elected officials. Should we have term limits? Third party, is that necessary? But before we get into it, make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, and give us that 5-star review. Hope you enjoy the show.
How in the heck do you stay positive about life, about the world, about government as an elected official?
I would say that my job is not my identity. So even though I work in government, I work as an elected official, it's not who I am. So it's a job, and I see it like a job. And I am a Republican. I know I've mentioned that. I'll probably have to mention it many times. But I'm not, my enemy is not Democrats at all. That's just, you have to be on a team. And so this is the team that I'm on. And I'm not mad at Democrats. I'm not mad at them for what they're doing. I just disagree with how they're trying to get us where we need to go. And because my job is not my identity, if I win or I lose, it's not who I am. And so it's a lot easier to not be discouraged with the system when I know what the problem is, and the problem is government. So oftentimes Democrats want government to solve the problem of government, but that just leads to more government. And I think that the solution right now in the state of California, the solution is less government. So it does put us at odds with one another because our philosophies are different, but we both know that there's problems. We all know there's a problem with insurance. We all know there's a problem with the cost of living. We all know there's a problem with our school system and our education system. It's just what are going to be the things to get us there. And to me, the problem right now is government. We have an insurance problem because government policies have gotten us there. We have an education problem because of government policies that got us there. We have a cost of living problem. We have high gas prices. You name every single issue that is driving people out of California, and it's because the government has created that problem. We have a housing problem that's a government-created problem. That is not a problem of the markets. That's not a problem of our geography. That is a problem of policy. And so it just so happens that we've had a supermajority. We've had only one-party rule for decades now, and it sometimes in government or all the time in government, you can make a decision, and it takes a long time to figure out what the effects of those things are. And even though there may be no immediate ill, it eventually just bankrupts the system, which is where you are right now in California. You've had one-party rule for 20 years, and what you're seeing is the fruit of all of those types of policies. Are they going to work? Are they not going to work? And if we make it personal, like it's our identity, like, I'm sorry, but Republican is not my identity. It is definitely it's the team I play on,
Right.
but it is not my identity. So to me, it's easy to stay positive because I'm basically I'm trying to solve the problem of why it's so difficult to live in the state of California, why it's so difficult to grow here, to thrive here, to do well here, because I think the problem is government. And even though that manifests itself as this party's decisions and policy decisions, there's no one person that I'm pointing to going, you're the problem, and so I need to get rid of you. It's like, no, you have a problem of policy. So I'd like to keep it more to, let's just argue the policy. And even though I personally may have problems with people, even that I serve with, whatever, if I have to make the issue something personal, if I have to personally attack somebody, then I've lost the argument. Then I actually didn't do my homework. I didn't research enough. I don't have a strong enough argument. So I'm going to attack the person and hope that somehow wins me the argument or I win the day. But that doesn't actually help people in the long term at the policy decisions that are being made. And because I don't go personal, because I don't attack personally, I'm a happier person. There's a philosophy of like, if you live by the praises of others, you'll die by their criticisms. And this whole people please, that is, to me, is the biggest disease in politics, is that you have a lot of insecure people that want to people please, that want to be they want to win, they want to get into the next election. And so they sort of do things that compromise their integrity or even principle if they have the principles. I would argue they don't have the principles yet. But okay, so let's say that they do. And I mean the principles of free market,
totally.
economics, that kind of stuff. not personal
Yeah,
principles.
I get what you're saying.
But, like, I do think that when you do the attack ads and when it's a compromise. And then I think it creates this insecurity that you are also going to get attacked back. And then you become at odds and at enemies with people. And I don't want to invite that type of influence in my life. I don't want to win the argument by attacking the person. I'd like to win the argument by having it be a better argument. And if I lose the argument, I'm just going to go back, get more information, be better prepared, and figure out a better way to persuade, to communicate, and to give that information to empower people to agree with that decision, not necessarily me, but agree with the idea and the decision that I think will move our community or our state or our federal government forward. So it's easier for me to say positive because I haven't made this an identity. I haven't made this super personal and everything is on the line and I have to win at all costs. I don't have that mentality. And so it does free me, most importantly, from thinking that I am the solution. I am not the solution to everybody's problems. Government is not the solution to everybody's problem. It's a job. If you want to take on that job, you should understand what the dynamics of that job are. You should understand what the responsibilities of that job are, and then try to be in that lane of getting that job done. And so if I say that I'm fiscally responsible, it means I have to look at every dollar. And that may not happen on the first day. But every time a new appropriation comes, every time a new budgeting opportunity comes, you want to see what's wrong. You want to see what's right. You want to really dive in to figure out what are the different issues so that you really begin to educate yourself and arm yourself to be able to tackle issues as they come because you actually understand how it all works. And so that's just sort of how my mind goes. My mind goes to do the job and do the job really, really well, not this is my identity. This is who I am. If I lose, I'm nothing. If I win, I'm everything. I'm the solution. You know what you guys need to do? You need to listen to me because only I have this precious information that you don't have. I have a news flash for everybody. Elected officials don't have special information.
Mhm.
They don't. They really don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would say more often than not, in all of the different places that I've served, if you can get an elected official to just read their staff report, which is sometimes 2 and 3 pages long, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a miracle.
genuinely, that is what I would want to when I look to elect someone and you listen to campaigns, that is what I want to elect is someone that's willing to do the deep dive.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the idea of term limits because once we get a good person in there, we want to keep them there, but then there's this idea of term limits. So what are your thoughts on term limits?
Yeah, so that's kind of a big well, that is an always discussion. California has term limits. Our county just voted in some term limits. So depending on which office you're looking at, there are some and aren't some. And I think the biggest con and the part that gives me a little bit of heart palpitations when we talk about term limits is the fact that if you keep removing the elected officials, which is the people's representative, to go in there and to do something, meaningful, meaning it's you're representing your people, like what do they want, what do they need? If you limit that person's time that is there, then you empower the time of the staffers, of the bureaucracy that is there. And I think you can see at the federal level more, obviously it's the deep state is what they call that. And really that's the people that have figured out how the system works and how to game the system and how to manipulate the system. And if I know that you're going to be there for 8 years, I can slow walk things. You can vote for things, but then they never actually happen. Like, look at what happened with Prop 36, right? So the people in California are like, hey, this lawlessness is not working for me. I can't take it anymore. We're going to pass a bill, a proposition that says you have to enforce the law. Like, no more of this. People can steal up to $900 and it's just
Yeah, that was
perfectly fine. And they can
wild.
walk home and get a ticket and whatever. But if you're a tax-paying citizen, you're going to get hammered on every fee and every consequence that there is. Well, what they did was they just didn't fund it. So the people say we want this to be a law, and then their bureaucracy and our governor was like, yeah, but I'm not putting it in the budget. So it won't be funded. So we weren't going to do anything to actually address this issue that you've said that you have. And so that stuff can happen. And that happens because the people that have been there the longest know how to work the system. And so I would say if you're going to do term limits, just say in the federal level, then you should also have term limits for staff. And you should have term limits for these agencies and bureaucracies, because if you're going to turn over the people's ability to have that longevity and that institutional knowledge, then you should also turn over the people that have been gaming the system and put in a new set of people that can come in, learn the system, and figure out how to address the issues because they've been living under that system. Oftentimes at the state, we say it all the time that like they exempt themselves from their own rules. And we're seeing it right in Palisades. So it's like, hey, we want to rebuild, but it's so difficult. And they're like, oh, we'll suspend our rules so you can build, right? Well, if you have to suspend the rules to build, it means that the rules are terrible and onerous, and you're wondering why you have a housing crisis when you make it absolutely impossible to build anything. And so when you have to build something and everybody's watching it, you're like, oh, yeah, that system doesn't really work so good. It's onerous. It takes too long. It's too expensive. And so people aren't doing it. Developers aren't doing it. All these people aren't doing it. And just on a little bit of a rabbit trail, I want to just address something. So we all hate developers. I don't, but people say they hate developers. But for any locality, every time a developer builds a new subdivision, that is a massive amount of taxes that comes into that city to fund your parks, to fund your roads, to fund your police. They pay developer fees are massive. They pay a massive amount of money to build it. That goes right into the coffers of the cities or the counties. And then on top of that, it keeps going because then those people that are living there are paying property taxes, which also comes back to the cities and the counties. So this demonization of developers is, if you want to demonize them, do it for the right reasons, but definitely know that there's another side of that coin where they're actually driving a lot of economic development and a lot of local taxes that fund all the things that you actually want. So, okay. Back to the state, the term limits.
Yeah.
If you just limit the people's access and the people's institutional knowledge and the people's representatives, and you don't limit staff and bureaucracies, then what you get is a uniparty where these people keep turning over and these people stay and things just largely stay exactly the same. I say the biggest disease in all of government is status quo. Things just stay exactly the same because it's just really difficult to change it. Look what's happening with the whole issue of Medi-Cal. Or Medicaid at the federal level. You have so much waste, fraud, and abuse. And people are screaming, oh, but you're cutting. You're cutting, not what you're cutting, just that you're cutting. And so the mass hysteria is you're taking it away from the people that need it. And it's like, no, we're eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the two people are saying different things. It doesn't matter what the bill actually says. The argument is you can't cut government. You can't cut everything's going to fall down. And so that's a problem because it's not working. It's not sustainable. It's collapsing. I will say that in California, the growth of Medicaid and Medi-Cal and all of those things really, I don't know if you've ever been on Medi-Cal.
No.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
And it was horrific. So it is state-funded, horrible healthcare. So what that you have now half of California on Medi-Cal. 15 million people are on Medi-Cal. So almost half of Californians are on Medi-Cal. And it has got to be the worst service you're ever going to get. It's terrible. It is not good healthcare. So they're going to give you healthcare. It's going to be on paper that you have healthcare. You have access.
Yeah.
But the care is terrible. It's awful. It is the worst. They pay pennies on the dollar to providers. You have less and less people even want to work with the system. So what? You can pat yourself on the back that you're giving healthcare to illegals, you're giving healthcare to children, you're giving healthcare to seniors, but it's awful. It's awful care. So is that something to be proud of? Is that compassionate? It's not. But if you haven't been there, so the good side of term limits is that, listen, I think the statistics now as of like 2022 is that 40% of new businesses fail within the first year.
Yeah, it's astronomical.
Okay, 70% fail within 10 years. So if you let's just apply that to elected officials, right? In theory, that's why we have a 2-year term or a 4-year term, because we think that you should be able to know what the heck you're doing in 2 years in Congress because there's 456 people. You know what I mean? It's not you by yourself.
Right.
So it's like you should be able to pick this up pretty quick, be able to start to understand and start to add value. And you have 2 years to do it. And otherwise you can get voted out.
Right.
But But that doesn't have 95% of incumbents stay in office. People vote 95% to keep incumbents. So they're not utilizing their best mechanism to get rid of bad elected officials, which is to vote them out. They're not doing that.
Right.
They keep voting for the same people. But then you have in all of life, 40% of new businesses. So probably 40% of these electeds are going to be awful. They're going to fail. They're going to be terrible. They don't put up any good bills. They don't fight against anything. You don't see them. You don't hear from them. They're adding no value. And we just keep them there.
What is the measuring stick that you would say to someone who wanted to say, is my elected official being a good representation? What are some key things that we can look for?
Okay. I think you should approach your elected official like you would approach dating somebody.
Ooh.
Okay? So I don't know about you, but if I was going to date...
It's been a minute.
I have some friends.
It's been a minute.
I know, it's been a minute. But I have some friends.
Yeah.
I have a sister. I have relatives or whatever. And if they say to me, oh my gosh, I met this guy, I'm like, oh, what's their name? And I Google them. And
obviously.
And what am I looking for? I'm looking for a video. I'm looking to see them. I'm looking at a picture.
Right.
I want to see what they look like. And then I want to see what their personality is. Because as we all know, the more you get to meet people, being good looking doesn't mean much.
No.
Okay? And their personalities can be so ugly that they all of a sudden turn ugly.
100%.
And we all know that person that's not the best looking that we're trying to set up our friend with because they're just awesome people and they get more attractive the more you know them.
Yeah.
So I would say you should approach an elected going who you're going to vote for like you would a date. You're like, I want to see a picture of them. I want to know what they do. And I want to watch a video. I want to watch them interact and what they're saying and how they're saying it and that it's
if they have depth.
Yeah.
I want to know, can you hold a conversation that has meaning and value?
Okay, let's just take this to what we know for sure. I watch the news all day, every day, all day, every day. It just never discourages me. It's fascinating. It's all data points. It's all really interesting. And I'm connecting it to all these different things and trying to get a pace of what people are talking about versus what's really happening and why are we distracted and all these things. Love all of that. Okay, well, so I'm watching I know I've seen Joe Biden in action through the decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm watching going, this guy's not the same guy. He's not well. So I've known that since he was running for office, since I'm watching the Democrat debates and there's all these people up there and they're attacking each other and you're just that guy's not on his game anymore. And I'm there's no way anybody's ever going to vote for that. And then COVID happens and he's in a basement and you don't really get to hear from him. Which means if he's in a basement, he can be reading what he's saying. You're not having an interaction with somebody, right? This is why these podcasts are so valuable because it's you see these interactions. You ask a question and you ask a follow-up question. And then it's not just the media that's 3 minutes and it's all crafted. I mean, look what happened. He got out on the debate stage.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden people are oh my gosh. It's what? How did you not know? We've seen it all over the place. But if people legitimately didn't know, it's because the way that things are packaged to you is in such a way to produce something in you, which is this, even if it's just a little bit of doubt that one thing or another is true. So you're just I'll just keep it the same.
So you're saying look beyond just what people are saying about them. Look beyond, right?
I wish people, I would say for a great majority, they're going to look at the ballot. If they recognize a name, don't recognize a name, they might look at the voter guide that they give you, and maybe you see who's endorsed them. So likely it's who your friends are voting for or who somebody has endorsed, and you don't even know why.
Yeah.
You don't even know why.
Right.
Right? So it's I'm saying you're likely going to do next to nothing. I know that. I know that from 10 years of running campaigns. I'm not asking you to do anything special. Go pretend like you're going to go on a date with them. And Google them to the point where you're okay, my would I like them? Just would I like them? Because isn't this amazing? We're in 2025 in the age of information, and yet you know nothing about the people that are running for office? How is that possible? That is a cognitive dissonance that we have basically said it's so impossible to know the people that are running. That's not true.
That's
just not true.
No, that is not true.
And it was highlighted with Kamala Harris because she could not put sentences together. This is a lawyer whose job is to articulate a position, is to literally do jujitsu with words. That's what lawyers do. That's what they're known for. They either, they understand words, they understand how these things are formed, what they could mean. And this woman can't put her sentences together to the point where they're suing 60 Minutes for manipulating it to make her sound better. There's a lot of effort to to make her seem a certain way. So don't you find it amazing? Like if my friend tells me that they're interested in some guy from Nebraska, I can find that guy and I can see what he has said and I can find him on social media and I can see who he is and whatever. So it's like, of course you can.
I mean,
but we
listen,
don't do it, do we?
We just
It would take 2 seconds. It's in our hand.
I mean, the perfect example would be this Coldplay thing. Like, people saw that couple
Yeah.
and they found them on the internet, and
Like
they
that.
found the whole world
Yes.
knows
So
about.
this is what's really
Yeah.
interesting about elected
If
officials.
it's interesting enough, they will. You can find it.
Yeah. So but we don't even try. So
No.
I would like to disrupt our thinking that it's not complicated to vote for people. It is not so hard to find out good information. It's actually super, super simple. You can just Google these people. You can Google, it'll take you 2 seconds. You have your ballot out there, you've got 2 names, and then tell yourself, well, if I was going to date this person, what would I want to know? Like if my sister was going to date this person, what would I want to know about them? That criteria for something so much as our elected officials, it's how if we can live in our own state. It's if we can grow up with our kids next to their cousins. Like, the stakes are really, really high in
Sometimes
California.
I wonder if people choose to not investigate because investigating means buy-in, and then you get disappointed. And then the disappointment manifests into disagreement with your neighbor.
Are you making the argument that politics is not going to disappoint you? It will.
In
what way? Because once
these
these people get into office, you can never get rid of them.
and
You can never get rid of them. And what are they doing for you?
that is exactly.
You don't even know where they are.
And
Where are they? What are they doing?
I wonder if that's one of the major barriers, is that they're concerned that they're actually going to have to buy in for these people. And
No.
then what they're going to sit in is their disappointment.
No. Have you ever sat there and been like, I could Google them, but I don't want to be disappointed if they win and I don't like. That's never crossed your mind.
No.
Never one time.
Yeah.
So really what it is we have convinced ourselves that there's no way to really know who these people are. And we've convinced ourselves that we just hate politicians and there's nothing, we just throw our hands up.
We throw our hands up.
We can't figure this out. You know what we need? We need term limits because we don't vote every 2 years. You're like, no, you vote. You can vote and you can get these people out. I would think of it a lot of like how what we watched with the riots that happened during 2020. Those types of all of a sudden you have the internet now, right? So you don't just have this curated narrative that's coming from media.
You don't have these news articles.
I mean, we have so much noise and we're not going to add to it, but like there's so much noise. But it is super interesting because if you're in this realm and you've studied it, like you know that these types of things happen right before midterms, right before presidential elections. Like you can
it ramps up.
You
The
can
cycle.
you can do this because they know that people don't do anything unless there's emotion and unless there's just some kind of a risk and everything is horrible and it's like you have to really ramp people up to get excited. You know, it's the homecoming game. It's like it's another football game. It's like no, this is a rivalry. Says who? You're a rival with everybody that you play. But no, this one is special. It's different. It's a home game. Well, you've got 5 more home games. So it's like you are creating something, creating a problem to get people hyped up, to have more buy-in, to have whatever. Okay, so we're in California. Like, I don't need an election to be ramped up. I mean, every time I go put gas in my car, I'm pissed. Every time I got to pay the electric bill, I'm pissed. Every time, you find out this thing is causing this price to go up and now you want more. You're like, how much more can you take? Like, I don't get to enjoy this life that we're living and what you make is not even matter anymore.
My big one is that bag tax. Every time I'm like, why am I paying for my bags?
Yeah, there's no less bags.
And there's no less bags.
There's no less bags. As a matter of fact, there's just bags that are even harder to biodegrade. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're thicker.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really difficult. So, and then you find out that you can't actually recycle these things. And it goes on and on and on. You know what I mean? So why term limits? Term
limits.
So I love that California has term limits because if 70% of businesses fail in 10 years, that means our elected officials likely are failing at a pretty high rate and nothing's ever going to get rid of them except a term limit. And I think that's what America is looking at. They're like, these people are entrenching themselves. They're not actually doing this great work. They are working the system. They're making a ton of money doing it. That's a real problem. So they're enriching themselves by being in those positions of power. And so if you don't limit that, they're not going to limit themselves. And the people have so disenfranchised themselves that they're not actually turning these positions over. So I think that the natural responses from the people that are super engaged is let's do a term limit. And let's forcibly move this over. And, the world is changing so fast now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
less and less do I have an argument against it. But I also think if we're going to have term limits for electeds, we should have term limits for staff.
Tell me about how we bridge this vast gap between the Democrats and the Republicans. And I know that there's lots of chatter about a third party. I mean, I feel like sometimes we've already been declared, or people have declared a third party, the Rhino Party. If you're not perfectly in line on the Republican side, if you're not perfectly in line, you're out, right?
Yeah.
I would say the same thing on the other side too. So is there room for a different flavor within these teams? I mean, I know there's libertarian, I know there's independent and all of those.
Yeah.
But I would even say, like, the rumor mill says, is there another one?
Yeah, so it's really interesting when you go back to sort of the way that America was built. So when we talk about that left and right, that scale, America was really built, and the founders had demonstrated this often, was that it was really built for the middle. So America does really, really well when you're left of center and right of center. And that is why the left always calls anybody right of center far right, because, again, they only have a left side because the state is in control to some degree or another in every aspect of that, of life in those places. But in America, the grand experiment here was that your rights come from God, not government.
Right.
And therefore, we created also, along with the American constitutional republic, we created a free market, which had not existed. And so there's a lot of new. So it isn't that the government is instituting rules around, we've nationalized healthcare, we've nationalized the railroad. It's not that. It's private industry, and government then comes and says, well, you have to follow these guidelines. You can't abuse your workers. You can't have and all of a sudden now you're regulating because you're not controlling, but you are regulating. You are saying, okay, you can do this, but you can't do that. And the problem happens when they over-regulate, which is not just creating boundaries. Now they're dictating what you need to do, not to do. That means the market is not dictating what they want. And then you have a bunch of surplus of things that you don't need because the government tells you have to have it.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't work, right? Like solar, like wind, like all these ideas where the government says, no, you have to use this energy, but that energy is inefficient, it's expensive, and if they don't subsidize it with your money, then it's not going to it's not going to pencil, it's not going to make sense. And so you have all these experimental things, which, yes, we should do experimental things as a government, but then you have to let the market then take that over.
Okay.
And if the market will bear that, it'll take it. Like with electric vehicles. Listen, if you want to not pay for gas because it's too expensive and you want to save on, all the oil changes or whatever else, that's great. Get an electric car. But if you don't want to do that, I can't force you. Now we're going to force gas stations out of business. Now we're going to force, you know what I mean? Like now we're forcing refineries. Like they tried. It just doesn't work because the market says we don't want that.
So
we
then
don't
what
want
about
unreliability.
So how does the third party play into this? What would that
look
like?
There's three parts of that, right? So this divide between Democrats and Republicans, the founders knew that there would be a left wing and a right wing, and they talk about it. So America is built, so you could be far right, but you're going to be mad all the time. And you could be far left, but you're not going to think the government has gone far enough, okay? America, the system that we have, was built for the middle, okay? That's what it's built for. And the founders demonstrated this with an eagle. They had a three-headed eagle. So you had the center eagle, you could see the full face and the two eyes, which was the House and the Senate. And when they saw eye to eye, they'd be able to get legislation passed. Then you have your executive, which is that one eye. And that one eye basically is the executive. You have a strong executive, a president, and that president says and executes all those laws that the Congress enacts. And then you have your judiciary, and that judiciary bird, that one eye, is basically looking and saying, does that follow the Constitution? Is that what the founders intended? Is that what the Constitution says? And they are connected with one neck, right? So they have to work together. They have to work in sync in order to direct the country. They also had two wings that they talk about. They knew they would have a left wing and a right wing. They knew we would eventually become two parties. That's always what happens. It happened after the very first presidency. We had two parties. And the idea of the left wing is that they always knew the left wing would be more attuned to the needs of the people. They always knew that. They were going to be super attuned to the needs of the people. They're going to want to meet the needs of the people. The right wing would ask two questions. Well, can we afford that? And does it infringe on the civil liberties or the individual freedoms of people, which basically means who's best suited to do that, the government or people? Is that a public good, or is a good of the whole?
Yeah.
Or is that going to be something that individual should do that and the marketplace should do that? And so these two wings are supposed to be able to sort of balance that out. And if they can work together, they will fly higher, they will soar. They'll do all that because these two wings are working together. If you have too much of meeting everybody's needs and handing out, you're going to lead towards tyranny. Because if I tell you what you can and cannot do, then I have to regulate that you can and cannot do that. And that leads to more tyranny, less freedom. And then the danger of the too far right is that you don't do anything and you just stay with the status quo and you continue to say no, and then people have to take matters into their own hands, which leads to anarchy.
Yeah.
So the founders knew there'd be a left wing and a right wing, and it was built for the middle. So all of the fringe stuff happens because government is out of balance. We've tipped too far left, we've tipped too far right, and we have to figure out how to balance. So we need each other. Democrats and Republicans need each other. And the founders knew that they came from factions. They came from the slivering off of things. And they understood that a two-party system, while it's going to have problems, creates the opportunity for compromise within your own side. They wanted these big tents because if you continue to faction, you diminish your power. You diminish the ability to actually compromise and work together. And so what you have in a two-party system, even though it's not perfect, factions are worse. If we divide off into 10 or 12 or 3 or 4 or whatever, you're really not doing what government was intended to do, which was to help it for the goodwill of the people, meaning like it should be good for all. So you should be limited. It's another limit on government is to say, if it isn't good for all, don't do it.
Interesting.
Don't do it. Because that should be the boundary line of what we're doing. And so it's like if I only offer, medical help to this group of people, but it's paid for by this group of people, that's going to be really difficult to sustain. Anytime that I'm paying for something that somebody else is using, you've eliminated the incentive for something to be good, right? So
Yeah.
if you're paying for, I don't even know, like if you go to church, if you go to anything that's a nonprofit, if I'm giving money to the homeless shelter, I don't know if they're actually serving food. I think they are. They told me they are. Their pamphlet said that they're doing it. And that's not happening. But you know what I'm saying? I'm just, whatever it is, a charity, all these NGOs and all this stuff, it's like, are you really doing the thing that you said that you were going to do? I don't know because I'm not the customer. I'm paying, but the customer's over here. And you get lower quality when they're not connected because I'm giving you that immediate feedback. And so I think that the whole of government, the checks and balances of that just don't exist anymore because, especially in California, it's only the left. We're only trying to meet all the needs of the people, which is why every issue has nothing to do with the taxpayer, but we're all paying for it. What is Gavin Newsom talking about? He's talking about homelessness. He's talking about healthcare. He's talking about immigration. It's like, well, we're paying for all of that. What about the taxpayer? What are you doing to help me not pay so much taxes? Like, of course you're altruistic. It's somebody else's money. It's always somebody else's money. And all these ideas require all the taxpayers to pay all this money. And what are you actually getting for it? Your communities are degrading. You are not having as many people engaging in the workforce. You're not having as many people start new businesses. You're not having as many people grow their existing business. And so I would say as a whole, it's not working. So how do Dems and Republicans work together? I don't think those two are the ones that have the problem. I think the system that we have in California to get information, I think we've all been like brainwashed to think we can't find out. It's too complicated. It's too difficult. It's not. It's actually not. It's actually really, really simple. Look at what Project Veritas is doing. You know what they're doing?
No.
They're going on dates with people.
That's hilarious.
And they're recording it.
Yeah.
They're going on dates with people and finding out information and recording it.
Yeah.
Okay. So approach your elected officials like you would a date and go check them out on LinkedIn. See if they're a professional. Like, go check them out. Go look on their social medias. And people say all the time, oh, scrub your social media. I'm like, no, don't scrub your social media.
Let them see.
If you have to scrub it, you probably should not be an elected official. Like, if you have opinions and you want to hide them from the public in order to get this job, like, maybe that's not the job for you.
Would you say that a red flag would be someone that would come out and say, I'm going to fight the Democrats or I'm going to fight the Republicans? Like, is that a red flag or should that be something that
I think that's just shorthand.
It's just like a thing?
Of course you have to fight. You have to fight for people. Of course you have to fight. You have to fight for people. You have to fight for these ideas. But what are you going to fight about? Of course you're going to fight. But what are you going to fight about? You know what I mean?
what should we be fighting about? Like, not, I mean, I don't even say we, like, what should be fought about?
Policies.
The policies.
The
And so if they
policies.
make it personal, that's the red flag.
Well, this is the reason why you don't break into factions. This is why Madison talked about in the Federalist Papers, like, this is the danger of factions. Factions are not parties. Factions are literally very isolated interests. So right now in California, the teachers union is a huge faction, and it dictates a lot of what happens because it's massive, it has a lot of money, and it pays the elected officials to do what it is that they want them to do. So you do have factions at the state level, and they're the people that are contributing. There's all the people that have lobbyists, all those people that can get carve-outs because there's an ideology that's pushing through. And if you don't create a balance, so the battle isn't Democrats and Republicans don't get along because these people in closed doors do get along.
Yeah.
They do.
I mean,
The issue is who's going to articulate it. And I think right now people are starving for the argument. Just give me the argument.
The policy argument.
Give me the policy argument as to why. And when they highlight, oh, but I get along with everybody, it's like, well, who cares? Like, that's not a value. Like, obviously that needs to happen, but it isn't the value of what I'm looking for. Do you know what the arguments are? Can you make an argument? What is your argument for this? How can you fix it? What's the temporary fix? What's the short-term fix? What's the long-term fix? Do you have to make concessions now, but that's because you need to get to this place later? You know, all of these things. And the Dems have just done a better job of institutionalizing and publicly funding their cause.
Yeah.
Right? So you have all these unions that are negotiated with an elected official how much they get paid. Well, that's self-interest right there. How are you going to pay me to give you a raise? And that's not a problem for anybody. That's a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a conflict of interest. But we've institutionalized that conflict of interest, and so nobody's challenging that conflict of interest. And then you have but their livelihoods, like all of the hubbubaloo about letting go of federal workers. We are bloated. We can't afford it. You're not getting your services because you're overpaying for buildings and staff that aren't working. So what is it that you actually want? So I don't think a third party is the issue. I think we need a bit of a revolution within our own parties. And I actually think a lot of that is happening.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is happening. I know as a lifelong Republican that I'm like, how do I feel about war? Why did I feel okay with war before? And now all of a sudden I don't feel okay with war. What new information do I have? And you look at this and it's like, oh, well, we prevent war by being strong and taking a strong approach. And then the left is like, yeah, but you're doing regime changes, and we don't know about that part. We're not listening to that part. That's not what we're being told on the right. We're being told that it's it's through strength that you prevent war from happening. But then they're like, oh, but you have regime change. Well, now it's like, now they're learning like, okay, well, people are, so it's like now we're swapping information, and it's like, okay. And I think that's happening. I think Trump has forced the Republican Party to figure out what is it that they actually believe in. What are they going to prioritize? Why did they believe that this war was okay then, and now they're not okay with it now? We're really having to like mentally figure out what our positions are, not just what you were told to believe because you had the media, but what do we really think? And I think the Democrats are going to have to do the same thing because you have communism and socialism now openly discussed as if that's an alternative to our system, and it is the antithesis of our system.
Right.
And so it's like somebody's going to have to confront that. They're going to have to decide internally. They're going to have their own civil war to figure out what they want to do, because I feel like that's happened in the Republican Party. We've had a civil war. Trump has brought about a civil war in the Republican Party. We're having to define and to see what it is that we really believe. And I think the same thing's going to happen to Dems. And I will tell you, politics is going to look very different in the next 10 years. Very, very different. And so I think we need to be prepared for what that's going to look like. I think we need to start thinking about hiring people that are prepared to actually make those arguments in those debates. And that is the direction I think that we need to go. Instead of pretending like we fight against Dems and Republicans, we don't. We fight against really bad ideas. And a lot of those have come from an establishment and a status quo, and we have to get away from that.
I love that. And I love that because you make it about policy and not people. We don't fight the people, we fight the policy, or we push back on the policy. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Of course.